I don't have like specific questions. I'd say that like a broader answer to that question is like I just have to keep making work, and I have to keep making it on my own body. It's just like this compulsive need to express myself in that way, I guess. Over the years, I've discovered that solo work that I make on myself is, I think, my strongest work. It's also logistically a lot easier in terms of funding and scheduling and all that stuff. Specific questions that I had, like I don't formulate questions, you know, like I know in academia, like you do that and your thesis is the answer to the question. I feel like in the work that I do in the studio, it's not so much that I'm formulating a question as just allowing myself to do whatever I want. In the beginning, there's a lot of allowance. There's just what do I just do on my own, and what sparks me. But it's a little different from like formulating a specific question. Because this is, a lot of times, like I think when you write the description for the piece for grants and stuff, that's like actually a really important part of the creative process, learning to put it into words and formulate questions. So some of the questions I had there was, how can I find freedom within restraint? A lot of one of the keys to the piece in each section is I have some kind of restraint. I'd say that's a big question in much of my work, is how to find freedom in restraint. The other question I had was, how can I make the audience complicit in forming the illusion with me? And then the final question I just remembered that I had from when I started making this piece, I read the Book of Laughter and Forgetting by Milan Kundera. I don't know if you guys know it, but I was really blown away by that book. And at the end, there's a whole interview with him, and he's talking about how he wanted to construct a novel where there's not like a plot, there's not a linear narrative, it's the themes that unite everything. And I was like, oh, can I do that with a dance theater piece? It's like it's not a linear narrative, but the theme is what links everything together. I think it's like impossible, especially when you're doing solo work on yourself, it's gonna be intensely personal. That doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be like sourcing from childhood traumas and telling your life story. It might be like a very dry, methodical piece, but it's still gonna be intensely personal, I feel. And I know that people watching have told me that when I perform, I really become someone else, that I really change, which is interesting. I feel like I'm just like channeling, not to get too woo-woo, but like I'm channeling these other sides of myself that for some reason I cannot channel any other way. It must be through performance. Like I can't just do it in everyday life. It doesn't work. Yeah. Like influences, artistic influences. Okay. Yeah, the Milan Kundera, when I was reading that, and so that was one potential influence in terms of like how to structure a work. That was an influence. Then I feel like the other big influences were actually La Ribot, the piece that you showed me, Still Distinguished, which follows a similar structure, like she's dealing with objects. It's a series of stills with objects, and sort of questioning how the body is an object and the object is body. And she's a single female performer. So that was one big influence, I'd say. And then I'd say another influence that I see is like Cindy Sherman, and this kind of, because she plays so much with putting on different personas, using like the master's tools, so to speak. This kind of subversive appropriationism is really interesting to me, really fascinating. Yeah, so I'd say those two are my biggest influences. Or at least initially, it's like it feels very disorganized, like early in the process, because I just want a lot of allowance in the beginning to go in any direction, and I do that for a while, and then I see what's really staying, like what feels necessary, what feels urgent, and then I do away with the extra clutter. So it's this constant narrowing and then expanding the idea, and then narrowing and then expanding. It's very cyclical like that, yeah. Later on in the process, when it comes to organizing, like for the showing, for instance, then it's more like, then the organization is more, how would I say this, like, I think more about, okay, how am I gonna take you with me, you being the audience, like in terms of deciding which section comes first and second and third and fourth. Then I start thinking more about like taking you, the audience, on a journey, and how I can take you with me, and how to create an arc. I start with the pearls, because to me that's like a primer. I'm giving you like a lens to view the rest of the piece with, in a way, and then move on to something a little more energetic so that there's a crescendo, you know. I think in this kind of structure, how to take you on a journey with it. Yeah, I mean, my training is, I have like a lot of formal dance training. So I started with ballet, and then had modern dance training, contemporary training. But I like finding new methods and techniques. I like finding my own. I think with each piece, I'm interested in finding a method specifically for that piece. Yeah, but I draw from, and I know what a method is because of that training, because that training is so thorough. And I mean, in the case of ballet, it's had over 500 years to be codified and deepen its codes. So I'm really drawn to finding my own code within the context of the new piece. I drew actually from our work together a bit, me and Sezen, especially the whole idea of like working with an object, and really some of the methods we used in making our last piece of just staying with that object for a really long time. Yeah, I did some workshops with him, with João Fideiro, and one of the ideas that really stuck for me was to stay with a single idea. How to stay with a single idea and just keep going with it. Which is restraint, right? You're not allowing yourself to indulge in a bunch of other themes. You're staying with this one thing, and it can be really difficult. You know, you can get really stuck, you can get bored. But if you go through the boredom, you really find something interesting. So I'd say that was a method. I don't know his real-time improvisation method so much. Real-time composition, yeah. But this method that he has, and that I think a lot of Portuguese artists have, of staying with one idea and like develop more and more and more, find more layers, find more meanings. This has had a big influence on me over the past several years. I think you see it in this piece. I'd say for this one, I'm trying to remember how many. I think I had like three feedback sessions with the collective here. And those are extremely helpful. Those are just like, they're totally necessary because for a couple reasons. For one, it forces me, it compels me to get to a certain point with the work. I'm forced to commit to certain ideas because I have to have something to show. It gives me a deadline. Also, just the feedback that everyone gave me was really, really valuable. Like, I'm lucky that I have this collective of people who give really thoughtful, constructive feedback. So there's 5 of us right now that are co-renting a room here in Atelier Real. We all are dancers, choreographers, performers, and we've all been making work independently, and we wanted more community, I think, more mutual support. And we found out that there was a room here for rent, so we all got together. We were actually already meeting, giving each other feedback on each other's works for several months, and then we found out about this studio. And so now we just continue to work here and share the space and have feedback meetings on a need basis, basically. And it's just great. Like, it makes a huge difference being part of a community, being connected to other people in your field, because being an artist is so isolating. There's no support, so it's been like really, really nice. So one thing that I do now is I kind of prepare, like prime myself for everything that they might see, which is good because it forces me to acknowledge all the ways in which what I think is happening might actually not be happening. So just in the preparation for the feedback session, I anticipate all the different perspectives that they might get. And that helps me to clarify, oh no, I don't want that. I don't want them to get that. I need to direct it more this way. And then in the feedback session itself, if the people giving you feedback are good at it, because it is a skill, hopefully they're really taking the work on its own terms. They're not making any assumptions, and they're helping you to more fully realize what it is you want to do versus maybe what they want you to do. I would say dance theater is the closest. Yeah. It's tricky right now because all of the categories are kind of exploding and blending and bleeding into each other. I don't even know what contemporary dance is anymore. It's very confusing. But I would say dance theater because I'm creating characters and I'm working with persona and characterization. And narrative, not linear narrative, but there are stories there. I feel like each character has a story. So in that sense, dance theater, I think, would be the closest. Yeah. More than contemporary dance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, about what political art is. I'm so confused on this. I feel like nowadays, definition of politics and the way the word is used it's anything can be political. Like, I could argue that it is political because it's like gender politics, you know? So it could fall into that category. The simple answer is no. I don't think myself as a political artist, but I also think that art is inherently political. So when people talk about political art, I'm a little confused, to be honest. Like, I feel like, especially really good art, it's just is inherently political. So when someone claims to be a political artist, I don't know what that means exactly. So can you clarify what you mean by it? Like do I have a message?
Yes, it was me that think about this person. I was thinking about feminism. So you should have some message to woman.
I mean,
think about this?
yeah, I don't have like a specific message. I feel like, I kind of don't, or there's this like, Anna told me about this performance artist, Finnish performance artist, I think, and he was like saying how you don't need to have a message to make art. Like, if you have a message, why wouldn't you just write it down on a piece of paper and hand it to me? To me, it's like the act of doing it is what's important. The act of like just seeing a woman do this is that has power in of itself. Whether you get a specific message from it or not is kind of moot. Like, yeah, because I've seen work where there's a specific message, and I usually hate it, like, because I feel preached to, and I feel like, why did you make art? Why didn't you just write this down, you know? Because it feels to me then like they're using art to get their agenda across, rather than just making art. Does that make sense? So I don't consider myself a political artist in that sense. I don't want to preach to you. I don't want to tell you what to think or anything like that. Feel like just the act itself of a woman, a single woman going on stage and exploring within her own body all these different people she can become is a kind of political act in of itself, and that's enough.